The Senate Committee on Natural Resources will now come to order. Will the Secretary please call roll?
Senator Flores.
Present.
Senator Goycochea.
Here.
Senator Hansen.
Here.
Senator Pazina. Senator Scheibel.
Here. We have all 5 members present, so we absolutely have a quorum. And today we'll be receiving presentations from the Southern Nevada Water Authority and the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. First, we'll begin with our presentation from the Southern Nevada Water Authority. So welcome. Mr. Ensminger, please, you are already forward, so please press your mic button, identify yourself for the record, do spell your name for us as well, and proceed with your presentation when ready. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Chair Pazina, members of the committee. My name is John Ensminger, John-Ensminger, and I'm the General Manager of the Southern Nevada Water Authority. With me today is Andy Belanger, our Director of Public Services. So I'll just jump right in. The Southern Nevada Water Authority essentially has 5 missions. We coordinate regional conservation activities. We do a 50-year water resource plan every single year so that our community always has a 5-decade outlook on what our resource portfolio looks like. We operate 2 world-class treatment facilities on the shore of Lake Mead that can produce 900 million gallons a day of clean, safe drinking water. We build a lot of very expensive infrastructure. We've built about $4 billion worth of infrastructure in the last 25 years, and now we're responsible for operating that. And we oversee some of Southern Nevada's most crucial natural habitat. We oversee the Las Vegas Wash restoration, the Las Vegas Springs Preserve, and the Warm Springs Natural Area at the headwaters of the Muddy River. No secret to anybody from down south, we're the driest major metropolitan area in the United States. And we're extremely reliant upon the Colorado River. 90% of our water comes from Lake Mead, which means that 76% of the population of the state of Nevada is 90% reliant upon the Colorado. But we have a lot of neighbors. You got 40 million Americans that get all or some of their water from the Colorado, 30 Native American tribes, a number of national parks, national monuments, and about 5 million acres of irrigated agriculture. And it's a system that, quite frankly, has been in peril. This is the average, or this is the hydrology since the turn of the century. Red horizontal bars mean below average, blue horizontal bars are above average. 2002 is still the driest year in recorded history, and 2012, 2013 were the driest back-to-back years in recorded history right up until 2021 and 2022 surpassed them. And this picture tells the tale. Lake Mead was essentially full at the turn of the century, and we now sit at less than a third of the capacity. So what does all that mean, from a practical standpoint? If the reservoir continues to go down, a couple big things happen. At elevation 950, Hoover Dam stops generating hydroelectric power, and if it gets to 895, it becomes physically impossible to move water through the dam, and about 25 million Americans downstream of Hoover Dam don't have access to the Colorado River. We have been working with the other states. I assume some of you have seen the press. Right at the end of January, 6 states submitted a proposal to be modeled as part of the environmental assessment being done by the federal government. California submitted their own plan. I don't view lack of unanimity at this particular juncture as a failure. There's actually quite a few commonalities between the 2 plans. I was with the governor's reps from Arizona and California on Friday. We're talking again tomorrow. So we continue to work to try to bridge the gaps between those 2 proposals. Just in terms of when you'll probably see stuff pop into the headlines again, the next major deliverable is the draft supplemental environmental impact statement that's due end of March, early April, and there will doubtless be quite a bit of press around that, and then a record of decision towards the end of July. So what have we been doing to prepare? I think the most important thing is this isn't sneaking up on us. We've been getting ready for this for 20 years. We've built major new infrastructure. I'll talk about conservation and resource planning, but water banking. We have about 10 years of our current demands banked in reserves, and that took us the last over 20 years to accomplish. So we're actually in a pretty strong position. So So when it comes to water recycling, the game in Southern Nevada is all about reducing outdoor use. And that's because everything we use indoors, if it hits a drain, we treat it, we put it back into the lake, and we can take out the exact same amount of water. So what we really have to focus in on is outdoor irrigation, water features, septic systems, and cooling. A lot of people talk about our disadvantages. There's no doubt in 1922 we got the short end of the stick in terms of negotiating for 1.8% of the legal entitlements to the Colorado River. But we also have several advantages, starting with the fact that we're upstream of Hoover Dam, which means we have now invested $1.5 billion of local revenues into building the third intake and the low lake level pumping station, which guarantees that we can pump water below dead pool. That's that elevation again where you can't deliver water downstream to California and Arizona. Another major advantage is we're united. In a lot of the other states, there are some factions, and sometimes those factions aren't always getting along. But the formation of the Southern Nevada Water Authority in the early 90s, together with our partnership with the Colorado River Commission of Nevada, ensures that we're always out there negotiating with one voice. And also, we didn't start this yesterday. We had our first drought response plan in 2004. We've had literally global leading urban water conservation initiatives that have been implemented almost every year over the course of the last 2 decades. And all of that adds up to this, which frankly no other community that I'm aware of anywhere in the world can replicate. We've added almost 800,000 new residents to Southern Nevada since 2002. We've cut our per capita usage in half in that time frame, and we've reduced our overall net water usage by about a third over that same time period. So we have to continue to build our codes, our laws, our institutions towards the reality. Nobody questions earthquake codes in San Francisco or hurricane codes in South Florida, and this is what we need to continue to do to make our community resilient. So we've done a lot over the course of just the last 18 months, going back 2 years when the legislature passed AB 356. We took out about 7 million square feet of turf out of the Las Vegas Valley last year, and frankly, I don't think it's affecting anybody's quality of life. We've limited pool sizes, evaporative cooling, put golf courses on budgets, and are sending a pricing signal to the very top tier of our water users, the top 10%. So when you add all that together, our board has adopted a goal of 86 gallons per capita per day by 2035, and we're on track to meet that. In 2021, we were using 110 gallons per person per day, and in 2022, we got that down to 104. So 6 gallons per person per day in the span of a 12-month period. And this is just one more way of looking at it. Southern Nevada is still growing. Over the last 3 years, we've added 47,000 new connections. So Durango Station's one connection, every single family home's a connection, but that's far outpacing the rate of new connections pre-pandemic. But in that same 3-year time period, we added 47,000 new connections. We reduced our water use by 12%. This is directly from our resource plan. And what it's showing on the right, the population projections from the Center for Business and Economic Research at UNLV are how we derive our water demands, and that's that red line. So you can see if we can get to 86 GPCD by 2035, using Sieber's numbers, we don't need any more water supplies. But we add in a high growth upper demand scenario that has even more population growth than Sieber anticipates, and under that scenario you see us tapping into those temporary bank supplies about the mid 2040s. So we have a bill that's been introduced. I think it has a number now, AB 220, that we're looking to further our conservation goals, make some modifications to AB 356, and importantly, really limit the ability for people to install new septic systems in Southern Nevada, because if you have a septic, it's not getting back to the sewer, we're not getting that return flow credit. So we think relatively conservative asks, but things that will help take our community to an even greater level of water efficiency. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. That was so efficient. So much information. Do we have questions from the committee? I know I have one, but I want to wait
Go
till.
ahead, if you want, I want to have one.
Okay, you were sharing your Deadpool number earlier, which I have to say is very concerning. Is there a point in time where you're imagining if changes aren't made, we could get to that Deadpool limit?
Absolutely, and it's not that far off. A lot of it depends on hydrology. And a lot of people are saying, well, we're having a good year this year. What does that mean? So far, it doesn't mean anything, because if it gets really warm, and especially really warm and windy in March and April, a lot of that snow is going to sublimate. It's going to go directly from solid to gas. It's not going to turn liquid and get into the stream channels. So until we see how the runoff comes off, we have to be very cautious about what we're thinking this winter is giving to us. But if we got the last 3 years, when we showed you the below average numbers for 20, 21, 22, if you got that again over the next 5 years, you could easily get to Deadpool in a 4 or 5 year period.
Senator Hansen?
Thanks, Madam Chair. John, you're sweating. Take a drink of water. You need it. Thank you.
Sorry, it's warm in this room.
Relax, man. No, actually, I'm been here 7 terms, and you guys always do a presentation. Every year, you see this dramatic expansion in population, and yet you keep providing the water, so you're kind of a hero in one respect. Couple of questions, though. Eastern Nevada has always been worried about the pipeline. Talk to Andy. That's officially DOA. Just want to make sure and get on the record so that my folks in those rural areas that see you guys highly suspiciously can have at least a little satisfaction of knowing the boss says the pipeline project is dead.
So I mentioned we do a 50-year resource plan every single year. Our board approved a new 50-year resource plan in January of 2023, and the groundwater project is not in it.
Good, so that's off the record. Now, a much more old question. Quagga mussels. Do you remember when that was a huge issue? Whatever happened to the quagga mussel situation?
Well, they're still there. They're not going anywhere. But we found a way to immunize our facilities. So when we built the third intake, we built a chloramine diffusion line. So there's a cloud of chloramines at the mouth of our intake that kills the villagers, which are the mobile parts of quagga mussels that attach and grow into quagga mussels. So we essentially put a bug zapper on our intake, and they can't get in.
Good, there's another example. You guys come up with an amazing solution to what at the time seemed like a giant problem. So congratulations. I enjoyed the presentation, and good luck. I feel sorry for the people that show up after 2035, though. We'll have to see whoever's sitting in your chair in about what? That's not that far off anymore. 15 years? Huh? Anyway, thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All right, well, you did such a great job with your presentation that there are no further questions. I'm sure we will in the future, but thank you so much again for coming out today. We really appreciate it. Next, we'll be receiving a presentation from the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. Welcome, Mr. Zimmerman and Ms. Morris. Please come forward, press the mic button, identify yourself and spell your names for the record, and proceed with your presentation when ready.
Thank you, Chair Pazina. John Zimmerman, for the record, Johnzimmerman, General Manager of the Truckee Meadows Water Authority, and with me is Steph Morris, our Director of Legal and Regulatory Affairs. So we'll go ahead and jump right into the presentation. Just a bit of background on Tumwa. So it was formed in 2001 by Reno Sparks in Washoe County. Basically, when Sierra Pacific, now NV Energy, decided that they were going to sell their water utility assets, the community stepped up, formed Tumwa, and purchased them in 2001. We're governed by a 7-member board of directors from those local governments. We serve about 450,000 people within our service territory. And then in 2015, we also acquired the water utility that Washoe County had been running. They had run a few satellite systems on the kind of periphery of Tumwa's general service area. This next slide, just to orient you with the Truckee River system, the water in Donner Lake and Independence Lake, that's privately owned stored water that is owned by Tumwa. And then the other reservoirs, Lake Tahoe being the largest, followed by Stampede, Boca, and Prosser, those are all federally owned reservoirs. Tumwa and other parties to the Truckee River Operating Agreement hold storage contracts with the federal government to store water in those reservoirs, and we manage that pursuant to the Truckee River operating agreement. So you can see we do have we're fortunate to have an abundant upstream storage supply. This slide just shows that we rely on the Truckee River for about 80 to 85% of our water supply in a normal year. We use groundwater wells. We have about 89 groundwater wells in 9 different basins. We use those for peaking capacity, mainly in the summertime. And it's not that the Truckee River is producing any less water in those years. We just need to get the water to where our surface water treatment plants can't push that water to the far edges of our service territory. So we need those groundwater wells for summer peaking capacity. And then in a drought, we rely and lean on those groundwater wells even more to get us through those droughts. And that's why our aquifer storage and recovery program is so important to us. A component of that is active recharge, where we're taking treated surface water, injecting it into the ground in those aquifers for future use. We're also using passive recharge, where when we have abundant surface water supplies off the Truckee River, we can rely less on those wells, save our water rights from those wells, and really help the aquifer be more sustainable. And just, I guess, go back one, just for context, the number here on our reservoir storage is 27,000 acre feet between Donner and Independence Lakes. In 2015, which was the worst water year on record on the Truckee River going back 100 plus years, we used about 12,000 acre feet of that upstream storage. And so it just gives you a little bit of context on what we use in a drought. This slide it puts into perspective how much water from the Truckee River Tumwa consumes to create a water supply for the community. And this is consumptive use. And so we divert more from the river, but we consume 3% on average in a normal year. And that's because a lot of the water goes back through the wastewater treatment plants and gets back into the Truckee River at Vista, just on the far east side of the community. And that water that returns back to the Truckee River is counted on by downstream users, because before the Truckee Meadows was houses, it was all farmland. That water was irrigated, and then the agricultural runoff went back to the river, and that's how the system is set up, going clear back to the Truckee River Decree in 1944. A little bit about the Truckee River Decree as well. The total amount of water rights that were decreed is 224,000 acre feet. In a normal average year on the Truckee River, it produces about 550,000 acre feet of water, so it was not over-allocated to begin with. It was decreed during one of the worst droughts on record between 1928 to 1934, so it was just good timing that it was decreed during that low water period. This slide just shows over time Tumwa's water use, our customers' water use, decreasing as population increases, and that's it's related to multiple factors. The main thing was in 1977, there was a large drought on the Truckee River, and the state engineer at that time required a moratorium and required Sierra Pacific to really take steps to use less water. And so part of that was enacting a statute allowing meters on water services, because before then they were prohibited. And so when a customer began, and our system right now today is virtually 100% metered, and that really helps because the customer can see their water use and reduce it just to save money. And so over time, you could see the effect of that. We also have, drought messaging. So when we go into a very significant drought and we call for cutbacks, our customers respond. In 2015, they reduced their water use by 17% on average. And so the next year, if it's a normal year, they don't normally just shoot back to the same use they were using in the past. They still conserve because they understood that they could get through in a drought with less water, and so they continue that practice. We also have a tiered rate structure, so the more water you use, the higher rate you pay, and that helps decrease water usage. It's also simple things like when Sierra Pacific had the water company, customers got one bill that had their water, electric, and gas usage on it, and electric costs were the highest, so customers didn't pay attention as much to the water. When TUMWA was formed and customers began getting one water bill, all of a sudden they started paying more attention to it, and that pricing signal caused water use to be reduced. So just over time, all of these things taken together have reduced water usage. Our total consumptive water use per capita per day is around 113 gallons. And so just to compare with SNWA, they have a little bit higher usage, but that's because they're hotter, drier climate, use water during longer periods of the year. In our area, outdoor irrigation gets shut off in around October, November, and doesn't come on until the danger of freezing is gone, which is usually April, May time period. And we expect that trend to continue just based on development, just based on our customers' water usage ethic, and developers are building homes that are larger, and there's just less irrigations over time. We've even reduced the amount of water rights we require developers to dedicate to Tumwa. This slide just shows our drought storage over time, and you can see in 2015, after TROA was implemented, it significantly increased our ability to store water in those federal reservoirs. But it really shows that even during some of those drought periods, we don't rely on our upstream storage that often. It's only when the so-called Thorston rates, which is a required rate of flow of the Truckee River at the California-Nevada state line, only when they drop off past a certain cubic feet per second do we have to use upstream storage. And then just going to my last slide, and then I'll let Ms. Morse take over from there, but just showing snowpack in the Lake Tahoe Basin over the last 40 years. It just highlights that in the Truckee Meadows, our water supply is really a boom and bust cycle. We go through periods of severe droughts and then periods of extreme precipitation. You can see between 2015, worst drought on record, followed 2 years later by 2017, which was one of the highest years on record. And so it's just a boom and bust cycle. Lake Tahoe this year is expected to be about 2/3 full after the runoff. And just to put that in perspective, when you have a full Lake Tahoe, we usually are guaranteed about 2 to 3 years of normal Truckee River flows. And then the second largest reservoir on the system is Stampede, about 226,000 acre feet. That's expected to go to 90% full this year, depending on what we get in March. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Morris.
Good afternoon, Stephanie Morris, Stefanie Morris. Just because everything is looking good and we're in a fortunate position to have a smaller watershed, but also smaller demand on the watershed, doesn't mean that we don't look at planning. So some of the things that we've done in our planning efforts is to really stress test our system. And this is a very busy slide, and I will just kind of get to the main point. But we looked at the highest emission scenario in our last water resource plan, and we took eight different models, and from the 8 different models, we took the worst case of each model run. So to put it in perspective, that's 645 years of simulation, and what you see here is the worst. The yellow bars indicate Truckee River water available to meet our demand, and the blue bars are the groundwater that would meet our demand. The gray bars are the privately owned stored water that we have in upstream storage, and then the red is shortage. So the first time we see a shortage with this, extreme sort of scenario stress test is in 2069 at a demand of 113,000 acre feet. What this tells us is that our drought planning has been successful in addressing sort of the extreme variability in the snowpack, which you saw on one of the slides presented by Mr. Zimmerman, and also in developing and enhancing our drought reserves. So given the Truckee River Operating Agreement, even though we've gone through a very dry period in the last 5 years, we have the most upstream storage that we've ever had, which is fantastic. And then also, this just tells us that we're doing a good job of optimizing different water supplies, groundwater, and surface water to meet our users' needs, and then integratively managing that to make it sustainable. So what we have done in the past in terms of demand management strategies are a lot of things that you're used to seeing. One unique thing was a lot of these came online in the early 1990s. So we've been doing this for a long time. Water efficiency codes with assigned watering day. We have seasonal water consultants. We have a tiered rate billing structure, and then education and outreach, classes and workshops about landscaping, irrigation, and water efficiency, and finally, a water usage review program. Something that we are beginning to do is put in advanced meters, and when we have those fully, the AMI system fully implemented, customers can look at their demand and water use on a daily basis in real time, and so that will help detect leaks and reduce, wasted water from leaks and things of that nature. Another tool that we have in our pocket that has been extremely successful is through the education process, we've called on our water users to have increased demand management during drought periods. So in 2015, we called for increased conservation measures, and we had a very high success and ability to enforce that. So that is a helpful tool in times of shortage. And I'm going to turn over to Mr. Zimmerman to talk about some considerations for future conservation.
So, talking about non-functional turf, so in the Truckee Meadows, we always encourage water conservation, and in a drought, we ask for voluntary cutbacks, and our customers respond very well. But it doesn't, because of different legal and physical aspects in the Truckee Meadows, it doesn't make as much sense for the Truckee Meadows to remove non-functional turf as it does for Las Vegas, and I'll go through a few of those key differences. First of all, we don't, based on our projections, we don't need the removal of that non-functional turf in order to meet our existing and future customer demands. In drought years, if we're relying on upstream storage and we're releasing it, that's when we call for conservation, because that allows us to preserve that upstream storage. But in non-drought years, when we're not releasing storage, it doesn't make as much sense to call for conservation. And again, this irrigation also gives us some flexibility in our system, because those the people who are irrigating non-functional turf, in normal years, we have enough water to do that, and then in dry years, they're able to cut back. So it's somewhat of a sponge in the system that allows us to have some flexibility. If all of that water was all of a sudden tied to a house, you're not going to be able to cut back as much in a drought, and so it gives us a little bit of flexibility. The second reason for that is also there's a legal issue. Under the Truckee River Operating Agreement, conserved water cannot be used for new growth, and so there's no ready funding mechanism to pay for that water that you would conserve through removing non-functional turf. And the main reason for that is in the Truckee Meadows, under the Truckee River Decree, as I said, back when it was all irrigated ag, a lot of that water got back to the river as agricultural runoff, and that return flow is used by downstream users, and so we can't recycle it similar to Las Vegas does with Lake Mead and the Colorado River allocation. Another point is that there's a different benefit, a lower benefit, because as Mr. Ensminger testified, there's about 29,000 acre feet that they can remove and save in the Las Vegas Valley. In our area, we only have about 8,000 acre feet of irrigation customers. Of that, we estimate that there's about 1,200 acre feet that is really could be categorized as non-functional turf. And again, because we can't use that for new growth, it would have to, the revenue shortfall from reducing that irrigation use, and also the cost of removing the turf would be borne by existing ratepayers. And so it'd probably, it'd be a couple $1 million revenue shortfall that would have to be made up with customer rates. And then based on the square footage cost that Southern Nevada Water Authority has for their non-functional turf removal program, it'd be about $13 million to remove that much non-functional turf in the Truckee Meadows. It also, outdoor irrigation in our area within our 9 basins is a fairly significant source of recharge. It helps our aquifers so that we can rely on them in the summertime and in droughts. In some basins, it provides up to 25% of the recharge to that basin. Two more points on that too is the wastewater treatment plants, so the water reclamation facilities at Tum Wharf, which is right on east on the Truckee River, and then also the South Truckee Meadows facility that's run by the county. They rely on the ability to dispose of treated effluent on that non-functional turf. And so if you were to take away that non-functional turf, you're taking away an opportunity for those water reclamation facilities to use that to dispose of their treated effluent through their reclaimed water system. And in the Truckee Meadows, that's about 7,000 acre feet a year that the reclaimed water providers provide to those irrigation services. And then lastly, we're seeing reduction in water use. As I said, developers, builders are building houses that have bigger footprints and less turf, less irrigation footprint. And the reason for that is there's a financial incentive. We require water rights to be dedicated in order to get service from TUMWA. Those water rights are expensive, and so by reducing their water use, their water estimate, they're reducing the cost of that development. And so we're seeing areas where developers are controlling through an HOA, through their CC&Rs, the front lawn areas of their development. And that front lawn, that front landscaped area is being controlled by the HOA. So even though it's part of the homeowner's property, the landscaping, the HOA controls it, and that'll help them reduce water use because they can control it better. And so we're seeing things like that happen in the Truckee Meadows, and as that prior slide showed, it's reducing water use consistently every year.
Stephanie Morris for the record. So in addition to conservation, we do have other things that we look at to help secure our water supply for our region. We're looking at reservoir reoperation. A lot of the reservoirs, as you saw on the map, are located in California, and they are also surrounded by Forest Service land. Essentially, the demand curves and the flood control curves for those reservoirs were done a long time ago, and they need to be updated. Plus, we have better information about and better science about how snow melt comes and how we can reduce the risk of flooding. And so we are currently working with the Bureau of Reclamation and helping fund a study to see if there are more efficient ways to manage those reservoirs. So essentially, instead of letting a lot of water run off based on a flood curve that was developed 100 years ago, can we wait a little bit to see if that storm actually does materialize and we need to evacuate that water so we don't lose it out of the reservoir and not have it be replaced. In addition to that, we're always looking to expand our aquifer storage and recovery program. And I want to talk about one project that we've been working on with a lot of regional partners. In 2016, there were new regulations passed for indirect potable reuse, A+ water. And all of our partners on the bottom here, through One Water Nevada, we implemented a pilot project at American Flat. And we tested to help see about how these permitting could proceed. We did a test to see, if it would be feasible. And it is very feasible, and we are now proceeding with the City of Reno on this American Flat project. It is a roughly $113 million project. It would take water from the treatment plant. It would about 2,000 gallons a year, treat it through the normal treatment plant process, then through the A+ process, then it would be recharged into the ground water. It would be there for a while, then it would be pulled out and served to customers. So we're going through the permitting process to do that project now. And the design process, it's approximately a 30% design by this summer. Essentially, the permitting process that we're requesting would have multiple checks and balances, meaning that we would take the water, we would treat it to A+, and then we would put it on fields to irrigate to test first and see if there are any impacts. So the next step would be to take the water, treat it to A+, inject it in the ground, pull it out, and use it for irrigation. And then the last and final step after everything works out would be to insert it into the ground and then take it out and insert it into our distribution system. So it's a very exciting project. And Mr. Zimmerman's going to talk about another project we're looking at.
John Zimmerman for the records. This is a project, it's still in the concept phase, but we're very excited about it. And the reason we're excited is that in this basin, there's about 45,000 acre feet of a storage deficit just based on historic pumping in that valley. And so it's an underground reservoir that's larger than the size of Boca Reservoir. And so it has us excited because we're exploring the possibility of using our treated surface water in times where the Truckee River is in normal or above average flows, treating that, diverting it to Palomino Valley and storing it in the aquifer for future use for drought supply. There's also a peaking capacity component that we like that would give us the ability in this, I should back up, Warm Springs Valley Palomino project is in about 30 miles northeast of Reno, going out Pyramid Highway. But it's exciting because of that amount, because we're looking at climate change and greater evaporation and the ability to store water underground. It just makes sense all around. We're also exploring the possibility of in the future working with Reno and Sparks with their water reclamation facility to send treated effluent out to that farm, which is currently pivot irrigated alfalfa, and substitute that treated effluent as the source of supply instead of the native groundwater. So that's just one other project we're working on. Again, it's a concept, but it's a water banking project that we think makes a lot of sense.
Stephanie Morris for the record. And then finally, again, as I mentioned, our reservoirs are located upstream in California, surrounded by Forest Service land, largely in the Middle Truckee River watershed, which is about 315,000 acres, of which 265,000 is owned by the Forest Service. So learning from other states and hoping to get out in front of wildfires and the strange behavior that we're seeing with wildfires. We have partnered with the Forest Service, the Tahoe National Forest, National Forest Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, and Truckee River Watershed Council to come up with a plan to treat 50,000 acres through fuels reduction. And so one of those projects is already in place. It's right above Stampede Reservoir. And the reason that we're concerned about this is potential water quality impacts and reduction in storage in our reservoirs from sedimentation. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Hansen?
Thanks. First, want to just compliment you on your presentation and the excellent job you're doing for Northern Nevada. Your relationship to the Tahoe Regional Industrial area, is that Tumwa's district at all? I noticed they just built the effluent pipeline all the way out to all that area. So that's nothing to do with you guys?
Thank you, Senator Hansen. John Zimmerman, for the record. Tumwa is a part of that project based on water right management. So we're not, Reno and Sparks own the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility, which will send up to 4,000 acre feet of treated effluent through the pipeline you stated. Tumwa's job is to make sure that there's adequate water rights remaining in the river to make up for the return flow, because as I stated in the presentation, you can't just take treated effluent because there's a return flow component to it and divert it out of the basin without making the river whole. So we're having to dedicate water rights for in-stream flow purposes to make sure they stay in the river so that downstream users are made whole.
Well, that was my next question. I represent Pyramid Lake too, and the tribe was very concerned about the pipeline. I went on some tours with them and Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada, and we went out but there was some fears at that time. So you guys are balancing that out. And isn't it also part of the Truckee Meadows Water Agreement that those upstream, I think it's Prosser, one of them, in normal years is actually supposed to go to help keep the trout situation in Pyramid Lake, their ability to migrate upstream and stuff going? Is that still the case?
Yes, Stephanie Morris for the record. So Stampede Reservoir is largely,
Stampede.
we have some storage rates in it, but in large part it's managed for fishery benefits by the tribe. And we, under Truckee River Operating Agreement, some of the ability for us to store water, if we don't use it within a certain time period, and it could spill, or really it converts to fish credit water that gets also managed for the benefit of the lower river fisheries.
Okay, good. So you guys are watching out. I just want to make sure, because I want to make sure the tribe is being included in all these discussions. The big giant areas of Reno and Sparks kind of overshadow the little tiny Indian community out at Nixon and Wadsworth. Last, real quick, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Southern Nevada Water Authority, compared to you guys, they have a 10-year capacity storage already available if they had total drought. What do we have in the north?
So John Zimmerman for the record. So every year, the water year starts off October 1st, and that's when our water supply, the snow building season starts. And so really, we start over every October 1st, building up in our reservoirs. As I said, when Lake Tahoe is full, we know we can count on at least 2 to 3 years of upstream storage to get us through. And then just historically, looking at the hydrograph of the Truckee River, there's enough water to supply us even in drought years. We rely on conjunctive use with our groundwater rights to be able to pump more in a drought year. We have an order from the state engineer allowing us to pump up to 21,000 acre feet in a drought year. Most years we're pumping about 8,000 acre feet, but in a drought we can pump that much for 3 straight years as long as we have banked it through active and passive recharge.
So they beat us by about 5 years, it sounds like. That's okay. You guys are on top of it.
Well, actually, Stephanie Morris for the record, this slide actually shows the amount of drought reserve we've used in the red, which you can see is very small, and the largest was in 2015. It was roughly 10,000 acre feet. And currently, we have just over 60,000 acre feet of upstream storage. It's just a different system. It's like comparing apples to oranges.
Well, I was having some fun. I mean, I want Truckee Meadows Water Authority to look better than Southern Nevada Water Authority. I mean, there's some competition here, you realize.
And we do, John Zimmerman for the record, and our water resource plan looks out 20 years, and we also look at population projection, water usage, and make sure that we believe on the Truckee River with all of our resources and upstream storage that we'll be able to meet that demand at least for the next 20 years and beyond.
Excellent. So, well, thank you very much, and glad to see the water situation's in good hands. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Gogachia.
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple, Madam Chair. Your American Flats purification water project. All right, are you using ribs to infiltrate that, or is it direct injection?
It's direct injection.
Okay. And you have water quality and sending it on down. Okay. Then didn't you also trade with TCID for some storage rights? Was it in Donner or Prosser?
So thank you, Senator Gocochea. So in 2016, we purchased the other half of Donner Lake. So up until that point, Truckee Meadows Water Authority and TCID shared the 9,500 acre feet. And then in 2016, we purchased the entire amount of that.
Okay, so at this point, TCID has no upstream storage.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that was the only things I had. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any further questions? I have one. Senator Scheibel.
Thank you. I always learn new things in these presentations, and today I learned that the Truckee River Operating Agreement doesn't allow for the use of conserved water to offset new growth. And so I was hoping that you could clarify the members of the operating agreement and how, if you know, how that term came to be.
Sure, and just to correct on my answer to Senator Gocochea, so TCID doesn't have upstream storage pursuant to TROA, but in Tahoe, Lake Tahoe, that's where they get their storage supply. And then to you, Senator Scheibel, as far as the parties to the Truckee River Operating Agreement, so the main parties are the Tumwa, State of California, State of Nevada, Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, and the federal government.
Stephanie Morris for so it came to be, it was a negotiated settlement. There was a prior agreement, the Truckee River Agreement, and then it was renegotiated, and Senator Harry Reid was a key player in all of that. And really, we had a lot more restrictions on what we could store. At that time, under the Truckee River Agreement, I think the most we could store was around 10,000 acre feet. And so it's really a negotiated settlement where each of the parties were able to take their water rights and use the storage and come up with a way, like the fish credit water and us having additional drought storage to meet their needs, in a collaborative fashion. And then it was approved by, the United States Congress, and then implemented in 2015.
Any further questions from the committee? All right. Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, our final order of business is public comment. As a reminder, public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person, but please feel free to submit additional written comments to the secretary and they'll be added to the record. Are there any public comments here in Carson City? Such a huge crowd. All right, seeing no one rushing to the front, BPS, is there anyone wishing to provide public comment on the phone lines?
Chair, your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
This meeting is adjourned.